A serious blow for President Jacob Zuma as a court decision over corruption charges goes against him.
This campaign is aimed at them. Phansi ngoblessa phansi.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa tells blessers to leave young women alone. It's Friday. Hello and welcome to it. You're watching eNews Direct. I'm Duduzile Ramela.
And I'm Sandy Lekangose. Good evening.
To comment on any of our stories, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook. That's at eNews Direct.
And you can also track our main stories using the following hashtags: spy tapes and Brexit.
President Jacob Zuma is one step closer to facing corruption charges in a court of law. The North Gauteng High Court has denied Zuma and the National Prosecuting Authority leave to appeal judgment in the so-called spy tapes case. The court ruled in April that the 2009 decision to drop charges against Zuma weeks before he was elected president was incorrect.
Another legal setback for President Jacob Zuma.
We have carefully reconsidered our judgment and conclude that the appeal does not have reasonable prospects of success.
It took just over 20 minutes for a full bench of the North Gauteng High Court to sink an appeal bid by the MPA and President Zuma. Their April ruling that the 2009 decision to drop charges against Zuma was irrational and invalid still stands for now. And the court has clarified that the decision to drop charges did not equate to an acquittal.
Such withdrawal does not nullify the decision to prosecute should Mr. Mche's decision be set aside. The said withdrawal cannot be regarded as a factor to stop Mr. Zuma to face the charges.
Both the NPA and presidency say they'll study the judgment before commenting on their next move. But options are now running out. The parties have a fortnight to decide if they will petition the Supreme Court of Appeal to hear the matter directly.
There's not really a legal question that is open for an appeal. So in that case, it is not likely that the Supreme Court of Appeal will change its position from a previous time. So it was more likely to be successful to petition directly the Constitutional Court because they haven't spoken on this issue yet.
This legal marathon is far from over. And while it's taken South Africa 7 years to come to this point, it could take several more years before the spy tape saga reaches a conclusion. Quite possibly after President Zuma leaves office. Nicolaus Bauer, Pretoria.
Thousands of women contract the HIV virus in South Africa every week. The shocking increase in new HIV infections, has now prompted government to launch a national campaign specifically targeting women and girls. Earlier today, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa explained that this vulnerable group need to have access to clinical and special support.
Unveiling a new condom. Government officials are leading the fight for an HIV-free generation. But right now, the battle is being lost. 2,000 women contract HIV every week. Ramaphosa didn't mince his words, quickly pointing to some of the main culprits.
This campaign is also about getting all of us to stick to one sexual partner, and for men particularly, not to prey on younger girls and women. Sitini na amadoda amadala. Leave our young women alone. Leave the young girls alone. Hambani nontanga benu. If you want love, go to your age group.
The campaign is being supported by foreign donors who say an HIV-free generation can and will be achieved.
I'm therefore delighted to take this opportunity to announce that the Global Fund is supporting a 3-year TB HIV program for 4.1 billion rand, which is $312 million, in full support of this national campaign. 21% of it will be specifically for the campaign. That's $62 million, as you said.
While many of the young showed off their creativity, it's what action young women in particular can take that concerns government. It's calling on them to take a tough stance against unprotected sex and unwanted pregnancy. In response, the girls and women present promised Ramaphosa to make education their priority.
Several Woodstock residents in Cape Town may find themselves out in the cold after calling the area home for 75 years. A Cape Town woman and her neighbors are being evicted out of their Bromwell Road houses. They have until the end of July to move out.
128 Bromwell Road, the birthplace and home of 75-year-old Brenda Smith. Her 3-bedroom house is also home to 18 other people, including her children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But next month, they'll have to find somewhere else to live. The Woodstock Hub, a property developer, bought the property to upgrade the area to make it more investment-friendly.
We are looking for places, but the places is all expensive. I can book me into a home, but I think of the children, you know.
The family fears what lies beyond the Woodstock area.
The rent is very extravagant wherever you're going to find places in that. And most of the people here around, they are not in proper jobs to afford that rent. Wherever they're going to stay in that. And most of them is, especially for their children, they want to raise their children up in an environment where they know that they are safe, where they know they're not going to be shot or not going to be abused.
One researcher says that the interest in the Woodstock area is sparked by the City of Cape Town's Central Development Strategy and a bylaw which tackles dilapidated buildings. She says both push a strong business focus.
So that kind of detachment from the inner city, moving from a very central location where there are good schools and good services and kind of the access to social networks that have been developed over generations, to then be moved on the outskirts of the city to these peripheral areas is quite damaging.
The Woodstock Hub claims it hasn't received rent for 2 years, but residents say several attempts to find out exactly who the new landlords are have proved fruitless.
The UK has voted to leave the European Union in an historic referendum. After losing the battle, British Prime Minister David Cameron announced he will step down in October, and the country will begin the process of removing its membership of the EU then. Our UK correspondent Natalie Powell reports.
A record turnout and a narrow win. 52% of the UK voted for Brexit. That's Britain's exit from the European Union. The pound fell to a 31-year low on the news, while UK stock markets lost billions on opening. This political and financial uncertainty likely to continue sending shockwaves around the world for months, if not years.
There was a considerable risk that Brexit would be lose-lose in economic terms because of the uncertainty, the negative effect on investor confidence and the possibility of financial instability. But even Janet Yellen, the chair of the Federal Reserve in the US, said just 2 weeks ago that she feared Brexit as a downside risk for the US economy. And it follows that for other parts of the world, whether it's South Africa, the Middle East, East Asia, that kind of effect can spread in the same way as financial crises always spread.
A victory for the Brexiteers, but for those in the Remain camp, it's a step into the unknown. The referendum outcome saw a tearful British Prime Minister announce his resignation after his government backed the losing side.
The British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction.
Leave campaigners are calling it Independence Day, but a win by such a narrow margin has highlighted huge divides within the UK. The process of leaving the EU won't take place until a new Prime Minister is chosen in October. It's likely to be a long journey though, and one that's expected to have ripple effects not just across Europe, but also across the entire world. Natalie Powell, London.
A quick look at world news now, and the worst tornado to hit China in half a century has claimed almost 100 lives and put hundreds more people in hospital. The tornado brought winds of up to 125 kilometers an hour, torrential rain and hail. Officials say a cleanup has started with the search for survivors completed. Banks in Zimbabwe are limiting cash withdrawals due to a shortage of notes. Long queues are becoming common outside banks as customers scramble to access their savings. Zimbabwe has been using foreign currencies since 2009. Depositors say they're worried the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe may again start printing a local currency that'll make their cash worthless. Let's check in with the Sports Centre now, where Sandile is standing by.
Time now for your social media.
It is indeed. Thank you so much, Sandile. The South African National Editors Forum wants the SABC to lift the suspensions of 3 journalists. They were suspended after challenging an order not to cover a protest. News staff were told not to report on a right-to-know anti-censorship demonstration against the SABC. Economics editor Tandeka Gobule, executive producer Futa Kricha, and senior journalist Suna Fente disagreed with the broadcaster's decision. SANEF says journalists have a right to express themselves. We end with this. Murder-accused Christopher Panayotu will remain behind bars until his trial in October. He has not been permitted to apply for bail. The court says there are no new independent facts to justify it. Panayotu is accused of orchestrating the murder and abduction of his wife Jade last year. We do love to hear from you. You can check us out on Twitter and Facebook. That's at eNews Direct, or you can head on over to our website. That's eNCA.com/direct. After the break, your business news as well as your weekend weather forecast. Money matters now, and Treasury has moved to reassure South Africans that the country's financial institutions are well positioned to withstand financial shocks caused by Britain exiting the European Union. The British decision has rocked global markets. Treasury and the Reserve Bank met this morning to discuss the possible impact the decision will have on the country. Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan says if there's a need for changes to trade agreements between South Africa, the UK and EU, it should be done within the next 2 years. The process for Britain to exit the monetary union will take 24 months to finalize. Gordhan says government will continue to monitor developments.
The trade links between South Africa and the European Union and Britain are fairly strong and are based on solid agreements. And we have a 2-year period during which whatever changes need to be made to agreements and treaties can in fact be made. The National Treasury and the Reserve Bank have met early this morning and are keenly monitoring developments that are taking place and their implications for South Africa, and will continue to do so over the next few days and keep the South African public informed.
Let's see how the markets perform today. Let's check in with the Weather Centre now. Here's Candice.
It's been a dry and predominantly sunny end to the work week across the country, except over the southwestern parts where you'll see a thick band of high cloud. Now that's ahead of a cold front which will slip just to the south of us on Friday night. It still brings in a large amount of cloud and cooler conditions in the southwest, as well as the possibility of fog along the west coast on Saturday. We're expecting a band of high cloud to extend through to the central and southern part of the country, with a fine and warm day over the eastern part of South Africa, and we're expecting sunny and mild weather in the northeast. Here's that sunny weather for KwaZulu-Natal with a warm forecast along the coast, as well as for Lundi and Pietermaritzburg, all in the mid-20s. Warm mainly over the southeastern part of the Eastern Cape, but with that cooler weather starting to move in over the western parts. It'll be a cool day throughout the Western Cape, 17 degrees for George and Hermanus. You'll see high cloud over this part of South Africa with mostly cloudy weather for Cape Town at 18 degrees. Fog extends along the west coast with highs mainly in the low 20s for the Northern Cape. Cold for Sutherland at -1 and 16 degrees. 20 as we head towards Welkom, but with the rest of those highs in the upper teens for the Free State. Another sunny and mild day is forecast for the northwest with a high of around 20. Zeerust warming up to 22. It'll be a warm day for Messina, Lephalale and Phalaborwa, all in the mid-20s. A maximum of around 20 degrees for Polokwane and Zanin. Partly cloudy at 24 for Bombela, with a sunny day and highs in the upper teens as we head towards the western part of the province. Fine and dry weather is forecast for Gauteng on Saturday, 21 for Pretoria, and Johannesburg and Vereeniging both topping 19 degrees. On Saturday, we're still expecting fine and mild weather for Gauteng, with a warm day along the coast from George through to Richards Bay. Mostly cloudy for Cape Town at 18, ahead of a cold front which moves in on Sunday night. That brings in rainfall over the western and southern parts on Monday, as well as a cold snap of weather, but with warm weather still continuing ahead of that. That's all from the Weather Centre for now. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, Candice. After the break, a star worker shows why it's good that the construction industry is going to the dogs. Welcome back. It's all paws on deck at a construction site in Cape Town.
And one of its star construction workers has hardly missed a day's work.
And he's doing it all for pats and strokes from his best friend.
It seems the construction business may be going to the dogs, quite literally. Meet Buckaroo, the Belgian Shepherd cross construction worker. The hard-working 4-year-old hound was rescued from the SPCA about 3 years ago, and every day since has been accompanying his owner Paul Edgecombe to work.
His main purpose is to maintain my sense of humour, but occasionally he looks after my equipment, but otherwise he just follows around, and he's a very good companion.
He's yet to drive anyone barking mad on site, as old Buck has been nothing short of a star employee.
Exceptionally good worker. He's only missed one day of work, and that was because of a foot injury. But otherwise, he's willing and ready every morning.
So you were allowed some sick leave, Bucky? Yes?
He goes to spend some time with his granny if he's sick.
Aww. And as much as the Black Beauty tries to go about his job in a quiet manner, he still seems to get lots of attention from his fellow colleagues.
So while Buck may still have months of work to complete on this particular site, we'd be curious to see just what exactly he'll be building next. Perhaps even give me a hand on a new home. What say you, Bucky? Who knows? Tanya Neft, Cape Town.
A reminder of the day's top stories before we say goodbye. A serious blow for President Jacob Zuma as a court decision over corruption charges goes against him.
This campaign is aimed at them. Phansi ngo blessa phansi.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa tells blessers to leave young women alone. And that's a wrap from the eNews Direct team.
Yes, indeed. We're back in 72 hours' time. Rhythm City's up next.
We do love to hear from you, though. You can send us an email to enewsdirect@etv.co.za.
Well, of course, you can just talk to us on Twitter and Facebook, and the handle that you need is @eNewsDirect.
Until Monday night, have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye.